Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to Designsmith, and today in this video we're going to be recreating this really cool Velvet Underground Swiss poster. Before we get started though, please make sure you are subscribed to support the channel. Alright, so I'm going to right click on this and click on copy image. Then I'm going to create a new document in Illustrator, and we're going to do 18 by 24 inches and click on create. I don't know the actual size of this poster yet, so I'm just going to paste this in here. And what we're going to do is center this on our artboard. And I'm just going to scale this up, and then we can adjust our artboard to whatever the size is. So it looks like we've got 17 by 24, so I was close. So we just got to adjust our artboard to this right here. All right, and the first thing I'm going to do is draw a couple of shapes here on the right side. So I'm going to grab my rectangle tool. I'm just going to draw a rectangle there. And I'm going to hold down Option or Alt and Shift and just click and drag. And then I'm going to hit Command or Control D to duplicate those. All right, what we're doing here is we're just laying down a color swatch. So I'm just going to use my eyedropper tool and pick up on each one of these colors that are in the poster. So that way we know for sure every time that we color an element that it is the correct color from that original poster. All right, now we're going to select the artwork. I'm going to go up here to opacity and lower this to about 30%. And I'm going to lock that layer. And since I'm not creating a brand new Swiss design poster, I'm not going to worry about grids. I'm just going to recreate this exactly as it is in the file. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is what I suggest you do whenever you're recreating something like this. And just as a side note, the whole purpose of recreating a poster is to learn how the poster itself was actually made. You can take those principles and apply them to your own designs. So what you want to do first is lay down the actual containers that everything is inside of. At least that's how I recommend doing it. And for this next part, you're going to want to make sure that your smart guides are turned on. So go up here to View and click on Smart Guides. And now I'm going to activate my ellipse tool. And as you can see right here, when we hover to the center of that square, it's going to show us the actual center point. So what we want to do is hold down Option or Alt and click and hold down Shift to bring that circle out right there. And that way you've guaranteed that that circle is inside of that square. So now we're going to click on this circle here, and I'm going to use my eyedropper and we're going to color drop on this square. And then we can click on the square right here and color drop on this black square. And if you've run into this situation where you've got the square in front of the circle, that's not a big deal. Just go ahead and click on the square, go up to Object, Arrange, and Send Backward. If you send it to the back, it's going to send it behind the original document, so make sure you don't do that. All right, and now what we're going to do is we're going to select both the square and the circle, and we're going to hold down Option or Alt and Shift and click and drag. So that way we just have an exact duplicate of what we created so far. All right, so now what I'm going to do is select that square, and we're going to swap the fill and the stroke to make sure that we see what the color is of that square that's behind the circle. So we're going to use our eyedropper, and we're going to click on that, and now we're going to click on the circle and color drop on the red. All right, and we're powering through pretty quickly here, but what we've got to do next is we've got to bring this rectangle over, and we're going to copy it, and I'll show you how to do that. Option, Shift, and drag it over, and you want to make sure that it is right here on the edge of this. Now, the way to make sure that these two squares are butted up right against each other is to select the first square and the second square at the same time, and you want to click on this square, go over here to your Align panel, and make sure that Distribute Spacing is set to 0. And then we're going to click on Horizontal Distribute Space, and that way we've guaranteed that there's no spacing in between those two squares. So now we're just going to click on this square, and we're just going to bring this over here. And now we're going to swap over to our pen tool, and we're going to go right here to where that anchor is, and we're going to click on that. And then we're going to come down to here where this anchor is, and I'm going to hold Shift and bring this over here to where this anchor is, and just close that right there. And now we want to select this triangle, go over to our eyedropper tool and click on this color. And then we still have our square here, and all we have to do is color drop on this black. And now this next part, we're just going to duplicate and drag this down. And you can do the same exact thing here, where we select both of these squares, and then select this one as your key object, and then vertical distribute space. That way there's no spacing in between those two rectangles. And now let's swap the fill and the stroke, because we need to be able to see the type here in just a minute. Okay, now for this circle, this is a large half circle. So I'm going to hold down Option or Alt and click and drag. And we're going to make sure that this is right at the center of our document. And you also want to make sure that it's at the very bottom. So go over here to Align to Artboard and then click on Vertical Align Bottom. So we know for sure that it's all the way at the bottom and there's no weird numbers going on. And now, still with that circle selected, we're going to go over here to our Transform panel and we're going to click on our reference point being the bottom center. And now we're going to go over here to our height value, and I'm just going to enlarge this. Actually, I'm going to do the width instead because we want the sizing to be the width of our artboard, which is 17 inches. So now let's select this circle with our selection tool, and now we're going to swap over to A, which is our direct select tool, and we're going to select just this anchor right here, and then press delete on our keyboard. So now we have that half circle, and one thing that I suggest that you do is to close this path. So we're going to use our direct select tool, select that one, hold down shift and select the other one, and we're going to hit Command or Control J, and that's going to close that path up. Because before we did that, Illustrator thought that that was actually an open path, and sometimes you could run into some weird issues, especially if you're dealing with the Pathfinder. So it's best to just go ahead and close that path off entirely. All right, let's swap the fill and the stroke because we've got to lay down some type here. But before we do that, we also need to duplicate this square at the bottom, and then just enlarge this to our background and have it go all the way across the width there. So we also want to send this backward. And then for now, we can just swap that fill and the stroke so we can see the type. And when the time comes to color these shapes appropriately, we've already got all of them laid down. Okay, now let's go ahead and lay down our type. I always start with the main type that we've got here. I'm not entirely sure what this font is. It looks very similar to Manrope, so I'll just use that. Looks like the type that the original designer was using here is a little bit taller than Manrope is, but that's totally fine. And the kerning on this looks very close to the original, so I'm not going to worry about tweaking the kerning too much. Maybe if we run into something that really needs to be tweaked, then we'll do that. All right, let's lay down our other type pieces here. Okay, so we have everything laid down here, and what we've got here on this particular poster is actually different from what we normally talk about with our Swiss design posters on our other videos. So we've got two different font sizes here that we're dealing with. So I'm going to go ahead and click on these two, and this is very close to 98, so I'm just going to go ahead and raise that up to 98. And now these two are exactly 24, but we've also got some differences here. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. And I'm not too worried necessarily about kerning, but let's look at line height. And line height is actually called leading in the print world, so just remember that. So let's go ahead and analyze this. Right now, this is set to auto on everything. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna slightly increase this to match that leading right there. And let's take a look at what we've got here. We're obviously not using the same font that this original designer used, but it can still give us a really good idea of things. So we've got 24 points for the font size, and then we've got leading set to 35 points. And what I'm going to do here is just duplicate this to the side because I want to give you a percentage to work with. So let's see what happens when we type in 24 times 150%. And 150% is always a good rule of thumb to start with. Of course, you can always change it depending on the individual posters that you're doing, but I like to stick with 150% because it's a nice round number, it's easy to remember, and it generally does a good job making sure that we've got consistent spacing between lines. So I'm going to say go ahead and stick with 150%, but feel free to adjust that when you're working with different fonts. So I'm going to say, let's go ahead and stick with this, and that 150% is going to be 36 points, and that's totally fine. Even if it's just slightly different, that's totally fine. Just remember that when you type this into your leading, let's say that you did type in 150%, it's going to take 150% of the number that's already in there. That's why I recommend taking it on the base size. So you do the base size first, and then 150, make sure you hit percent, and then that'll give you the number that you need. And then we'll do the same thing down to this line. Okay, so I know that there's only two font sizes here, but I do want to analyze these two numbers. So let's take a look at this one. We've got 98 points, and then we've got 24 points. And if we do some quick math here, we do 24 divided by 98. And as you can see here, this is very close to 25%. So you can probably just do 25% across the board if you're dealing with two different font sizes. If you're dealing with more than two, then check out this formula video right up here where I tell you how to size your type proportionately on your Swiss posters if you're using more than two font sizes. Okay, so I'm going to go up here to Object, Unlock All, and that's going to select only what's unlocked. So let's go ahead and hold down Shift and just bring that over. I'm going to bring this back to 100%, and we don't have to worry about locking it. So what we're going to do is select this square right here and just color drop on this black. And now we're going to send this to the back. And let's go ahead and select everything that's in this area. And then I'm going to deselect that black right there. And then we're just going to color drop on this white. Now we'll select this rectangle, color drop on this black background, and then select this half circle and color drop on our yellow. And so here's our original poster on the left side and our recreated poster on the right side. We didn't use the same font that the original poster has, but the whole point of this is to really kind of get your hands dirty a little bit and see how different elements shape up and see how you can apply all of these different type principles, element principles on the page itself. And it's really just helping you to recreate things. The more you recreate existing artwork, the more you're going to learn when you're making your own. So if you've never done anything like this, I highly encourage you to do it. If you haven't gone through design school yet, or maybe you're just now starting, you will be recreating a lot of work in your design classes, or at least you should be. I hope this video was valuable to you. If it was, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.